Okay, so welcome to the Passionate Pioneer Podcast, Series 2. Today, my special guest is Christy CASHMAN. Hi, Christy.
Hello.
Hi. So Christy isn't just an actress, American Hustle, TED 2. She's a storyteller who lights up screens and pages. From her critically acclaimed novel, The Truth About Horses, to founding YOUthink, where she empowers teens and inspires creativity. Now, with YOUthink Retreats, she's building a wellness haven for adults, focusing on body, mind, and artistic spirit. Let's see how Christy keeps redefining what it means to be a creative force, and dare I say, a passionista.
Like that. Ooh, haven't heard that one.
Yes. Well, that's my community, Christy. I'm building a community of passionistas, women who dare to ditch the status quo and follow their passions and their purpose.
No, it's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, inspiring. And the podcast is the basis for that. Of
That's
interviewing
fantastic.
women, yeah, who have dared to follow their dreams.
Well, that's a group I love being lumped in with. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very welcome. So, obviously, we're delighted to have you on the podcast today. Let's jump right in. Let's talk about acting and producing. So you've starred in these amazing films from American Hustle to TED 2. So what's been your favorite acting experience and why?
Well, I didn't star in them. There were a couple of independent films that I was in where I've had, more leading roles, but the big ones that you're talking about, TED 2 and American Hustle, they were really fairly small parts, and which was fine. I think that the one that was most memorable for me was probably working with David O. Russell, because I'd heard that he could be really a real perfectionist, and that he was and he maybe lost his temper once or twice. And so it became this sort of challenge for me to when I booked the role and I realized that I got the role. I've been in two of his movies. I've been in Joy and American Hustle. And I think when I realized that I had the part, then I got a little bit scared about, working with him, but he was awesome to me. I made him laugh, and he was really nice and extended my role a bit. And so I think as far as my very small collection of films that I've been involved with as in front of the camera, I'd say working with him was pretty memorable.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because we always have these, or society has these perceived ideas about people. When you meet them, you have a different experience.
Yeah.
I think every experience is individual.
Totally.
Right.
And that's what it felt like. It felt like, okay, I was experiencing this just for myself as opposed to what I've heard and what people were telling me. And that's really the best way to approach anything, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So you've also produced some films. Was there a big difference between being in front of the camera and being behind the scenes?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, making films, my experience in the film world was that it's extremely collaborative, and that's a good thing, because it's actually kind of weirdly a technical art form. I mean, filmmaking is so technical. I mean, I'm sure if anybody has spent time on set and you realize how the sound and the lighting and the timing and the blocking and everything has to be so perfect in order, that's how you get the take that, and then say, well, okay, now we're good to go on,
Right.
That's why you do so many takes, is that because of a lot of times it's not necessarily the actor, it's something going on technically that the director doesn't like. And so I like that I still enjoy being part of, the film world when I'm working on something. It's been a while, but I found it a little bit frustrating as an artist myself, because I I think I knew that I had a story in me that I wanted to tell, but I just didn't necessarily have the confidence to do it. And so I think I was kind of hiding behind wanting to be in production, wanting to be a producer, was in a way me as an artist hiding behind um, another title so that I could be in this storytelling world in some capacity. But then for some reason I just decided I was too frustrated in that world, um, and I stopped looking at screenplays to option. I stopped reading books to try to adapt. I stopped what I was doing in that world and decided to just write my book.
Right.
Yeah. So that was probably the best thing that I've ever done for myself.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a very different experience. And when you're trying to tell a story and you have as a producer, you're trying to get other people to portray those characters.
Mm-hmm,
And that's
mm-hmm.
that's a challenge, isn't it? Because you've got the story,
Yeah.
the characters, and they have to, be very adaptable. You have to find the right actors for the parts, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, in a film, you have your, the if you take a book, for instance, and then adapt it to a screenplay, then you've got the person who's adapting it, their view of what the story should be. And then you have whoever comes on board next, the producer, their version of what the story should be. Then the director has their version. And it's a lot of changing a story into something else. And that was I think another part of my frustration in film was that I had written a screenplay, and it was, at the time it was called Sunny Side Up, and it was about this chicken farmer who had a reality show come to her farm. And the reason that they were doing it is because they were going to give her kind of like a makeover. And her name was Millie. Well, the screenplay that I wrote was a totally different movie than what we shot.
Right.
And
That happens sometimes. I've heard that before.
yeah,
Yes.
and I didn't know enough to kind of stand my ground. I wasn't confident enough. And really what I should have done is said, no, because I was producing as well. So you would think that I wouldn't be shoved around so easily, but I was. And I was just like, okay, well, this is what this actress wants, and she's done a lot of things, and so she probably knows. Well, she didn't know, she was wrong. And we should have stuck with my original story, because my story was better. And she went off on tangents, and so did, and the director had his own version. It was just sort of a cluster, what. But anyway, it's something that it's something that I had to experience. I had to experience it in order to sort of become more confident about myself.
Okay. So in saying that, then, what advice would you give to aspiring actors and producers trying to break into the entertainment industry? Is it confidence? Be confident, stick with the script.
Yeah. Well, whatever it is about a story that inspires you in the first place, don't let go of that, whatever that is. Make sure that your point of your reason for wanting to adapt this story, or bring this story from script to screen, whatever it is, the theme, maybe it's one scene, hold on to it and
right.
Dig your heels in. And then you've got, obviously there are other things that you have to be willing to let go and allow someone else to be right, but the way that I did it is I just decided, well, I'll write a book. No one can touch that until it becomes adapted. And then it's someone else's, then they can do whatever they want.
Okay. Okay, we're going to talk about that now. So we're going to talk about your debut novel, The Truth About Horses. And the novel has earned early praise in the literary and entertainment world from author Colin McCann, Harry Connick Jr., Carly Simon, and of course, actress Jane Seymour, who is a national
Yeah.
British treasure, who is teaming up with you to co-produce your book into a feature film. So what inspired you to write a young adult novel?
I didn't necessarily know when I sat down to write what the point of view of the protagonist would be until I started writing. And I think what I really loved about the age of Reese, who was 14, was that it's such a between age, you know, it's so betwixt and between, and you are trying so hard to figure out who you are. You're trying to blend in at the same time as show that you're different. It's such an awkward age, and I think in some of us that we're arrested at that. You know, it's like that arrested development. I think there's a 14-year-old inside some of us that just never leaves, and we always deal with our issues from that perspective without realizing. You know, we're not really tuned in. We're thinking we're still kind of protecting that 14-year-old. And I just think it's such a strong, without really thinking about it, because a lot of it was instinct. You know, a lot of, I think after the fact, I know why I did it, or I think I know why, but a lot of what you do, you know, when you're creating, I believe, is you're following your gut and your instinct. And that's just what my instinct told me, was that was the age of the girl. And she, you know, she loses her mother. It's not a spoiler alert because it happens in the very beginning. And it's such a huge loss, and it's at such an awkward age. And in storytelling, you want things to be as awkward and just difficult and challenging as possible in order to make the audience pay attention.
Right. Because the book deals with themes of overcoming adversity, you know, like losing her mother, which is a terrible age, 14 to lose your mother. So can you share some experiences that maybe helped you shape this story when you were writing it?
How did I shape the story?
Yeah, how did you
Sure.
sort of, some of it was personal, because a lot of times we write books, we write from our, and we teach from our personal experiences, right?
True. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that the themes of loss were strong for me.
Right.
And yearning was strong. Yearning for something that you had that made you feel whole or complete in the past that went away, and then always trying to find that place again, trying to find when you felt whole, when you felt complete. And for Reese, it was the horse that her mother had trained, and trying to find him and finish telling the story about that horse that her mother had started. And and so meanwhile, she's dealing with her father, who's dealing with grief entirely differently, you know, that he's really sort of on the path of avoidance, and in a way a little bit like, if he can just patch things up and make it look like a life, you know, then maybe those feelings will follow. I think that's what his perspective was, and writing about him was a lot of fun because I'm that person too, you know. Right. I'm the angry kid who lost her mother, and I'm also that person who had to patch things up and make it look like everything was okay all the time. Right. And those two sort of feelings are always battling, I think, inside, you know. And I think that life is loss, you know. If you think about it, we're every day, you know, we're losing the day before, and it not to make, you know, be macabre or anything, but it's true, you know. We are life is more about loss than it is about staying the same, and accepting that is not so easy. No. But when someone loses someone at an early age, I think it's something they have to grasp quickly, and then realize that, okay, just because that happens happen doesn't mean that tragedy's around the corner all the time, because the PTSD is also part of, what Reese was dealing with
Right.
is
The trauma.
the
Yeah.
trauma,
Yeah.
anxiety, and then sort of having to relearn how to ride a horse and jump a horse and and trust that her body knew what it was doing, because she started to think about everything, and then once you start thinking about everything, you're really screwed.
Right. Well, when you lose somebody, like a parent, and I've had losses. I've lost my father and my brother. My brother was very young, younger than me,
Yeah,
and it pulls the rug from under your feet. You lose your grounding, and then you're like, okay, why did that happen? Was it, so then you start asking. It's just human to start asking questions, and especially at 14, it's you still
yeah,
have to figure out who am I.
that's
When
right.
you're a little bit older, you kind of have you've already formed your
You
values,
froze.
beliefs, and you're a little bit more grounded and mature. But at 14, it's a hell of a task to
Yeah,
to get through something,
yeah,
especially when the other parent has stepped out, because everybody deals with grief differently, right?
so true, so true. And all these different stages don't necessarily come in the order that we're told.
Right.
The orders are
Okay.
all.
So let's lighten the subject. So with Jane Seymour co-producing The Truth About Horses, are there any other dream collaborations you have for similar future projects?
Oh gosh, good question.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I love Reese Witherspoon's work. I love what she develops. I love that she has a book club and that she adapts from her book club, um and also, uh really inspires people to read books. I think anybody who does that in this world of being kind of full of always being distracted by our devices,
Mm-hmm.
anyone who's trying to get people to read books is a hero to me.
Right.
So and it's fun to, when I'm walking on a train, like watching people, what are they doing, or, who's doing what. And obviously so much, so many of us are on our phones, but I love seeing the person reading the book. Or when I was traveling recently, I passed a young girl sitting on a stone wall reading a book, and it was just such a great image. It felt like something from bygone era in a way, but
It's crazy, isn't it? But that's true, right? I
true.
love the book feel, that the smell of the new pages, and the delving into the story. But I think it, like you said, it's there's not many people. A lot of people read on their devices now, or
Yeah,
but we're really stuck into this anti-social media, it should be called, really, right? We're
yeah,
missing so many things.
yeah. And then Harry Connick Jr., who's very good friend of mine. I'm really close with his wife Jill, and his daughters. Actually, their whole family. We traveled with them in Australia last winter,
Nice.
and we had the best time. But he's starting a production company, and he's working on some really interesting projects. And I'd like to throw my hat in the ring to maybe be involved in some of those, because
Yeah.
he chooses such interesting and you know uh, I think projects that have great themes, and have a lot of things that make you think. You know, I love those kinds of projects, psychological thrillers and that. But I really admire him and would love to possibly work with him.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know much about Harry Connick Jr.'s work, but I do know Reese Witherspoon, and she's got many followers. And the thing I like about her is she's very authentic when she speaks. She speaks from the
Yeah,
heart, and I like
yeah. As does Jane, by the way. That's exactly how
yes.
Jane is,
Yeah.
and that's why we're working together. She is, I don't know, she's just one of the most inspiring women, people. Forget about women. She's just the most inspiring person I've ever been around. And she works and works with such passion that I guess that, it almost makes me envious, but it just makes me want to follow on her coattails in a way,
Right.
grab onto those coattails and go with her, because she's found the magic of life, which is following your passion and finding stories and projects that you're passionate about. But it doesn't just limit. She's not just limited to the world of film and television. She also has her amazing organization, which is her foundation called Open Hearts. She's also an artist. She's always painting. She has so many things in life that she explores and just does, instead of talking about doing. She just does them.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's nice to do that. It's nice to surround yourself. The more you surround yourself with motivating, inspiring, empowering people, that's the life that you create for yourself, right?
If Passionista was in the dictionary, Jane's picture would be next to it.
Oh, right. Okay. Maybe she should be a guest on my show.
I think 100%.
We'll see. Let's wait and see, right? That could be a fantastic collaboration for me. So let's talk about Kilkea Castle in Ireland, because has the castle's history or atmosphere influenced your writing or your life in any way?
It's interesting because Ireland has, from the time that I was 20 years old, I hadn't been out of the United States at all. And Ireland was the first place I went to, and it was for horseback riding. I went with a group of friends to go riding, to do, basically an equestrian tour around Ireland. And that was so special to me, to leave the United States for the first time, go to Ireland, meet the people, see the countryside on horseback, and be able to experience another country like that. That's just always going to be kind of mind-blowing to me, that I was able to do that. And I think what happened is it just made Ireland so special to me, because it sort of makes all of your senses come alive. You can go someplace, right? You can travel someplace, fly there, land, get in a car, stay in a resort, and go to the restaurants on the resort and never really feel the culture and say that, oh yeah, I've been to that country. That, that's not really going to a country and experiencing the culture. And I think what Ireland, I didn't go to some fancy hotel and then never leave. I really, when you go and you meet people and ride in a different county every day, which is what I did, I couldn't help but fall in love with it.
So you fell in love with it so much, you bought a castle.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's exactly. I mean, then fast forward about 5 years after I'd been going there every year, and I was on my way, and my husband, who we just started dating, asked what I was doing. He asked if I wanted to go out. He lived in Boston. I was living in New York, and I said, well, I'm actually on my way to Ireland. And he goes, Ireland? I said, I'm half Irish. And he invited himself along. And I said, well, I'm not sure what you're going to do while I'm going to be, riding every day. He said, oh, I'll go look for a castle. And then fast forward from that 20 years, and he bought Kilkea Castle.
Right.
Yeah. And it had been abandoned for a couple of years. And we didn't exactly know what we were going to do with it at first. We thought maybe it would just be sort of a place for the family to go. Maybe it would just be something that then we sort of thought, well, maybe we could rent it out, for weddings or something like that. But we just renovated the entire property and brought it back to what it was, which was, a hotel and venue for lots of different retreats and weddings and reunions and everything.
Very nice, very nice. It's somewhere I haven't visited, but I've got friends who have been many times to Ireland, and I've got obviously Irish friends, and yeah, they love it. It's very green. I don't know
Yeah.
why I've never been. I think when I started traveling in my 20s, I went to the other side of the world. I came to your side of the world,
Okay.
America,
Yeah.
Canada, the Caribbean, and all that side of the world. And I've only recently, because now I live in Italy, so I've only recently in the last 8 years come back to this side of the world to explore.
Hmm.
Ireland, I've just never been, but I know the green, it's very green, isn't it? Does it rain? It rains a lot, a bit like England.
It does, but you have, you know, part of being over there is just ignoring that and doing whatever you're planning to do
Putting
anyway.
on your wellies and getting on with
Yeah.
it, right?
I mean, for instance, you know, when I would go over and we'd have a ride planned, you don't cancel just because it's going to rain, because that could happen every day that you're
Right,
there. So
right.
do it anyway. And I think that's the beauty of it. You know, they just, you know, sure, it might rain, but then in, you know, 30 minutes, the sun would be out and shining, and then it could rain again. But
Right.
it's a funny country that way. But it's, to me, that was part of the appeal. To me, that was part of what I loved about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't blame you. It is a beautiful, beautiful country. Um, so let's change and let's talk about the youth mentorship and wellness, because that's really is close to my heart. So you founded Youth Inc., which is a program that mentors young artists. So why is empowering young creatives important to you?
Because it was something that I believe I could have benefited from, you know, as a young adult. And um, I had mentors, but I didn't have a, you know, like a real obvious place to go for inspiration. And I had to kind of find my way. And once I found a mentor, you know, I wouldn't let go. I was like, okay, you're you know, it's like, it's kind of something I think I craved. I craved having someone who saw me. You know, when you have a mentor, you have somebody who sees you as, for me, it meant sees me as an author, sees me as somebody who has something creative to give and a story to tell. And, you know, take away all of the other things that maybe could be confusing about you and your life, like what your background is, how much money you have, what kind of car you drive, you know, where you went to school. That all goes away, and they
Yeah.
just, the mentor just sees you and says, you have something special to give. And that's what it felt like for me to have that experience when there were a couple of people, Betsy Horst and Arthur Vanderbilt, who were both authors. And that's what it felt like to have them read my early pages of an early draft of my book and be able to see the material stand on its own 2 feet, as opposed to, you know, looking at me and then or knowing me, right? Knowing who I am, who I'm married to, you know, how I live, all of that doesn't matter.
It's
What
stripped
matters,
away, right? And it comes
yeah,
down to the, yeah,
yeah, what matters is, what do you produce as an artist? And I
right.
wish the world was more, you know, keen to be open to that, as opposed to, you know, only listening to certain voices at certain times. You know, this is trending. This is, it just, it doesn't feel authentic to the artistic world to say that, you know, certain voices don't matter at certain times. And I know that we've been, you know, there's a reason that we do what we do, is because we really want to have marginalized voices heard, and that's really very important.
Yeah.
But you can't only do that. You know, you can't only, which is, you know, to me, that just feels the opposite of what an artistic society should be doing. um it feels wrong. But anyway,
Well, I think that
it
you're
doesn't.
right. I think that you are right. You know, it's you wishing for that society, but I think we're getting there slowly, one step at a time. And I think, you know, things like you
Yeah,
think are, you know, empowering young artists. So you're doing your bit
right.
to help change mindsets, and that's all we can do. We just have to do, you know, a little bit, and then someone else will do something, and it has that knock-on effect. And so I do think that we are, you know, creating a better future one step at a time.
I like that. I like that perspective of you do your bit and maybe somebody else comes along and does their bit. And then
Right.
there's not as much pressure that way, but you just do it. Yeah, like you said, you do what you can. And the reason that I started You Think in Kilkee on our property there was because basically because I had the venue to do it. You know, when you
Right.
have 30 kids and you want to provide a place for them to explore creatively who they are and offer them all kinds of different um, you know, disciplines in the world of art, then you really have to have a place to do it, and the place where they can, you know, be fed and move around and not have to be restrained to like one single classroom, because you know art isn't necessarily about being in a classroom all the time. And so I used our property there as our, basically that's our base. So that's a, I'm very proud of that, to be
Yeah.
able to say that, you know, Kilkee Castle, our hotel in Ireland is the base. It's the mothership for You Think.
The mothership, yeah. But it's also great because, you know, it's very green. It's in it's in nature, and there's
Yeah,
no better co-creator than nature.
so true. Oh my gosh.
Right,
That,
because they can go and play in the grass, in the forest, in the, you know, they can, and as soon as you're in nature, you know, you can't, nobody can deny it. No matter if they live in the city, they crave, when they go into nature, they walk in the park, whatever they do, they get energy. You get energized when you go into nature. It's why I live on a mountain. It's why I'm surrounded by nature. It energizes me, you know, so I'm not surprised that, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of creativity coming from those, from the
they're
youngsters.
just they're just bursting with creativity. It's amazing what they tap into when they're just simply given the space to do it. It's remarkable. And I've, my mind has been blown because there are weekends when we have the retreat for them that I can't be there 100% of the time, but I'll be there, you know, at the beginning on Friday, and then I'll have some, you know, some things that I have to go do. I'll come back Saturday afternoon, and they would have created an entire set for a play, you know, or and know the characters and have the screenplay written. And it's just unbelievable what young people can do when they're just given the space to do it.
What an opportunity for them. That, you know, they've got the space and the freedom to create and use their imaginations. There's no, you know, there's no better imaginations than the youngsters.
So true. It's
Right.
so true.
So how about the other program that you have, which is You Think, which is the wellness program for adults that inspires new way of thinking. I love this as well. You know, it's about taking care of yourself, self-care, to achieve mental and physical health, optimum mental and physical health. Because I do believe that, you know, that we are moving in society now towards more self-care. And I think adults need that support. So tell us more about that program.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we're just becoming more aware. Um, I had actually started to think about doing a retreat, of course, right before COVID, called Be at Kilkee. And the whole idea of Be at Kilkee was be creative, be
Present.
inspired, be present, just, and then it was just be.
Nice.
And I think we have a really hard time just being, just,
Yeah.
you know, just existing in the moment with our without our minds kind of taking over thinking too much about the past or the future. You know, we're really, it's really hard to focus on where we are. And I know that when it was really important part of me writing my book was to be able to just be in the moment and write from a place of, you know, of authentically where, you know, where I felt. But Be at Kilkee was the idea of having a retreat where adults would come and essentially experience what the kids are experiencing, trying something new and understanding how that makes you feel. Like for some reason we get to a certain age and we say, well, for instance, I don't roller skate, you know, well, why wouldn't I try? It might be fun, you know.
Absolutely.
I don't paint. Well, maybe you should, you know, see what it feels like. I think for keeping a fresh and new mindset for adults, it's really important to be trying things that we've never tried before, whether it's in the arts or even a sport or anything. I just feel like it keeps our brains young and it keeps us thinking from the perspective of basically like a child, because we're automatically becoming vulnerable when you try something new, because you're not going to be good at it necessarily right away. Some people are good at everything, it seems like, but most of us, no matter what, we can find something we're not good at. And in some ways, it's like this idea that be able to do that without judging yourself, you know? And so anyway, before COVID, that I was working on that. COVID happened. And so what took place after COVID was then I got involved with I started the YOUthink mentorship program with, I met Mary O'Connor, and she had the ability to know where where this would best be in Ireland, who to reach out to, and that kind of thing. And so that happened. And then the Be at Kilkee kind of came about afterwards because it helps to support the YOUthink mentorship program. So adults come, they have this experience of really taking care of themselves, meditation, yoga, trying new things, doing kind of some sort of crazy fun activities. There's this one activity called gibberish, where you're not allowed to say a word that actually makes sense. You can only speak in gibberish. And it's how like it's how a group sort of bonds. There's another fun exercise that you have to just stare at somebody without saying a word, for a stranger preferably. and then afterwards write down what you're feeling. Now all of these sound really scary, and they are, but that's what makes us vulnerable. It's what makes us start to really kind of see how we think and what we're doing. And it just makes us, all these things I think make us more aware. That's what I'm going.
Yeah, it's being aware, isn't it? It's understanding ourselves. Oh, I can't do that. Oh gosh, I can do that. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing, because I think that any form of self-care, you know, self-care can be reading a book, it can be watching a comedy, it can be calling a friend, it can be as simple as just, you know, having a bath with candles. It can be eating ice cream. It can be whatever.
Yeah.
It could be anything, right? It's different for
Here,
everybody. But I love the fact that you talked about Jane and how she follows her passions. What makes me happy? I'll just do that. And I think that's, you know, and sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. It's like, well, I'd like to try that, and that looks really fun, but I'm not sure. So it's about, so you help them to overcome those little fears, to
exactly
do things that they want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is which is great. So talking about self-care and balance, how do you manage to balance your various creative pursuits with your role as the owner of the castle and these projects, and as an author, etc.?
I'm still learning how to do that, actually. Right. And I a lot of it for me is trying to put my phone down and not look at it for hours at a time, because I feel like we have this really unhealthy attachment to our devices now, and it is really not a great thing for creative people, because creative people, who we are all creative, by the way.
Yep.
I believe that in order to really live a healthy existence, it means being uncomfortable. And I think that having our phones to look at all the time, whether it's a game or texts or emails, whatever it is, photos, social media, it's robbing us really of sitting in a way with our discomfort, which makes us think, which makes us be better people, which makes us create.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's stopping us from that. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but
No, it's not just you. It is. It's overwhelming. In fact, when the internet came into our power, we have the power of knowledge, but in fact, it's overwhelming.
yeah,
It's
it is.
overwhelming. And it, the doom
Yeah,
scroll, as they call it now, you're just scrolling through things, and
yeah. And I'm the
it
worst
does it.
at it.
It
And
stops your creativity.
totally. I mean, how many books would I have read if I hadn't been scrolling? How many books would I have written if I hadn't been scrolling? So I have a real love-hate relationship with it, because I did rely on a lot of quick facts for writing my book. Just um, ask Siri, ask Google, whatever, and so that was helpful and helped me to get information quickly. I didn't have to go to
Yeah.
the library and get a book. You
Right.
know what I mean? So that's all very
It is
helpful.
very useful
Yeah,
but it can be, I think, for some people, their main source, and that's not a
I
good thing, because that kills their creativity.
yeah, yeah. I think as a society we need a tech cleanse, or at least I think what's happened is it's almost like we were infants, right? We're given these things that have all of this information at our fingertips, and so we can say, oh, there's a good reason behind this. It's not like I'm not hurting anybody by having it and using it and always looking at it. I mean, how many people now, if you're flying and you're at the gate, it's like, and you're alone, even sometimes families, everybody's just standing there looking at their phone, or at
Right.
restaurants, but at
And
the gate,
even I was just going to say, it's not just there, it's at restaurants, it's at,
yeah.
it is the screen. Everybody's glued to the screen and having
Oh my,
I've
yeah,
seen it, people having conversations with each other across the table. Oh, that's
yeah, I know.
phone, Dad, and have real we're losing the art of conversation, right?
Totally, totally. But I think it's because we all have this discomfort inside. And how do we get rid of that discomfort? Is we distract ourselves. And these devices are doing that for us. They're distracting us from really understanding who we are and why we have that void inside, and we all have a void. It's just part of the human condition.
Right.
And rather than, you know, trying to sit with it and or create because of it, we're distracted. I just think it's the biggest distraction, and it's the biggest it's I'm like I said, I have a love hate with it, but I hate it more
Right.
than I love it. I really do.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think that we could all just you can set a timer, I think, on your phone when you've had enough screen time, and you can set that yourself, however, and I think that is good, because it is good just to step away sometimes and do
Right.
something else.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is we were sort of given these little toys as and we're like, we have these, oh, what's this? We're looking at, and does all of this. It's really hard to have a management kind of a
Yeah.
thing, a plan around our devices,
Yeah.
because we were just handed them, and like sort of like cave people were like, oh, and then we're pretty soon we're just like totally
we're totally dumbed down because we're not thinking for ourselves anymore. We're just relying on everything. I'll just read everything on here. It'll give me all the information instead of, trying to find the information basically ourselves. Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? Okay, it's complicated. So let's looking forward. So you're working on your second novel and a children's book, yes?
I am, yes, when I
So-
can find time, yes, when I'm not looking at my screen.
When you're not
When I'm
doom
not-
scrolling.
When I'm scrolling.
So can you tell us a little bit more about these upcoming projects, or are they a big secret?
Yeah. Oh, no, not big secrets. I mean,
Okay, good.
My second novel is called Beulah, and it's based in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee in the 80s. So guess what? Before cell phones, which was like which was very purposeful.
Good.
And I just love writing about the 80s. I was in middle school. I was in high school in the 80s, and so it was very fun to go back to thinking about how people spoke, what we were doing, what teenage life was like then. So again, it's a young protagonist. She's about 15, and there's some deep themes in it as well. Her mother is a serious alcoholic, and in the story we find out where her pain comes from, because from the protagonist's point of view, her name's Barrett Childress Owens, a good Southern name. She just sees her mother as kind of embarrassing and not someone who she wants to be seen in public with.
Right.
And so the story is a lot about her getting the understanding of her mother and where her pain came from. But also in the very beginning, a girl goes missing right off the bat. So that's the story that we kind of track along, is what happens to a small town when someone goes missing.
Interesting. And what about the children's books? I'd be interested
Yeah, children's books. Well, so they were inspired by the monkey that supposedly lived in Kilkee Castle. And apparently there was a party going on, or the monkey was up in the nursery, and a fire had started. And the monkey was the one that I guess made so much noise and was able to wake someone up who was able to save the kids from this horrible fire.
Right.
And so I love the idea of telling that story, but I also had to tell it. I also just kind of used this monkey to just tell other stories. I mean, I didn't really get into the history of that monkey and what he did at Kilkee Castle. I just used him to he was inspired. He was an inspiration.
Monkeys, we know they're always getting into trouble, right? They're always used to,
Right.
they're normally
Very
getting into trouble.
short.
They're doing things, and they're naughty, aren't they? And children like that, they're like the,
Yeah.
they're like the naughty animals. So as someone who has achieved so much, what words of wisdom would you give to aspiring artists and young people in general, Christy?
Put your phone away. Just for an hour. Just for an hour. And you asked me a little bit earlier, and I think I didn't answer the question about, my process, or, what it was I did. I try to put my phone down in the morning and not look at it until I've at least read a few things, until I've at least meditated a few minutes. And I'm just trying to build that up. Like, I'm trying to turn 2 minutes into 5 minutes, 5 minutes into 20 minutes, and realize that, before I ever had a phone, before I ever had something that, I could be reached 100% of the time, life went on, life was okay. And so in a way,
we survived.
Yeah, we survived. And so I'm trying to let go of this idea that, oh my God, what if one of my sons can't reach me, or what if one of my horses is, well, I think that we have this ability to, instead of realizing that, actually things are okay. We have this ability to really grab onto fear, and we make fear the basis of everything. Oh, fear of missing a call, fear of missing an important email, fear of missing an opportunity. And so I'm really trying to change my ideas around that. And so that's why I said I'm still learning. I'm still learning how to let go of sort of what I've been doing and what I've grown accustomed to doing in my routine, in my creative routine, and learn to go back to something a little less distracting, a lifestyle a little less distracting.
And it isn't easy. People say, oh, I want to change my life, but it doesn't change overnight. It's something that you take little steps. Like you said, you start with 1 minute meditation. I started with that. I think I could only manage 30 seconds, I think, when I started.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to close out the noise of the world. And and that also can be scary. Because we like the distraction, we're used to it, it's familiar. So when everything's quiet and silent, and we silence our mind, and we've got all the million things that come into our mind, I've got to do the shopping, ironing, I've got this, I've got to go pick the kids up, I've got, it's very difficult, and it takes practice, but you've got to choose it every day.
I don't think we necessarily even are aware enough to realize that the reason that we're so attached to our devices is that we're actually afraid of what's going on in here. Yeah. I think we're afraid to actually to make that a reality, because if that were the case, then we have to, kind of swim against the current.
Yeah. Well, we're so used to putting others' needs before our own. We're so used to that everybody else is a distraction. Even before cell phones, we're always looking and people pleasing and making sure everybody else is okay before us. And I think it comes back to the self-care, which is about take care of yourself first, put yourself as number one, make sure your mental health and your physical health are good, and that has a knock-on effect. The same as anything you do, right? It has a knock-on effect.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me, what else is next for Christy?
Well, other than just finding time to write, I have a pretty full life. I have 3 dogs and 4 horses here, 2 horses in Ireland, and I'm really lucky. I have a huge family. I have 9 brothers and sisters. I'm about to have my family reunion, actually. I have about 20 people coming from North Carolina, Michigan, California, and all converging at our place in Chatham on the Cape. So I love family things. I love playing tennis. I mean, so I have a full life, and I actually am a little bit of an activity junkie. I mean, I'm either on my paddleboard or on my horse, or, in the gym. And I have to realize that about myself, is like, what am I doing all of that for? What am I avoiding? Well, I think I'm avoiding working on my next book.
I think I'll go horse riding today. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't you say you were going to write some more of that? Oh yeah, I'll do that later.
Oh yeah, right. It really is hard to sit down and do it, and that's why I think early mornings are the best. I mean, if I can just get up, get my coffee, and go and sit and write, then the day hasn't gotten hold of me. It's really hard for me in the afternoon to make time, even though I lie to myself all the time, say, oh, I didn't write this morning, I'll sit down, after lunch. Well, after lunch I want a nap, and it's like
right. But there's the funny story of people that want to write books, and they stop working, they stop doing everything, and they sit down, and their mind goes completely blank. So I think sometimes it's good to do these other activities, because when you're doing them, you get ideas. You're like, oh, I've got an idea for that chapter, or I've had an idea for this, or oh, I know what she's going to do next. Right?
You're so right about that. I mean, that's actually the love part of having my phone on me, was when I would be walking my dog or riding my horse, instantly take it and talk into it and say, remind myself, even a word, even if I
Yep.
came across a word that I hadn't heard in a while, you know, and I just say the word into the phone and realize that, okay, I want to go back to that. I mean, I've pages and pages of notes in my phone because of that. If you're driving, you know, you can't necessarily get out a pad and a paper. Oh, sorry, a pad and a pen.
Right.
So, you know, it's easier to just put the phone on, you know, audio and talk into it.
Technology is a useful tool. AI is a useful tool, right? As long as we use
Mm.
them wisely.
Right.
Let's, you know, step away every now and again. So, questions I ask all my guests, Christy. What's one piece of advice you wish you'd gotten earlier on your journey?
The one piece of advice would be to really take the time to figure out how to make whatever that voice is inside you come out in the world, whether it's painting or writing or acting or whatever it is, and make yourself the project.
Oh, I like that. Make yourself the project, right? I like that. And what do you hope your story today will inspire in other women who are listening?
To just sit down and do it. Sit down and take the time, even if it's 15 minutes a day. You know, start writing the book. Start taking the pictures if you're a photographer. Start getting in touch with that creative side of yourself.
Very good.
Maybe you're in the kitchen, you know.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, so a million thanks to Christy for joining me today. Thanks to our audience for hanging out with us. We hope you found it inspiring and empowering. And we'll see you next time on the Passionate Pioneer podcast. Bye.
Thank you.